Well, sadly, our oceans are suffering in many ways. I would put plastics high up there. You know, there are areas in the oceans that are bigger than Great Britain, just thick, horrible plastic that has been dropped in over many years.
Some people might say, well, is this just kind of a grand version of a Keep Britain Tidy campaign? It's cosmetic, it's making things look nicer, get the plastic out of the ocean and it won't despoil it. It has a huge effect, doesn't it, on the ocean life and indeed then through the food chain.
The plastic in the oceans gets eaten. I mean, it breaks down, it gets eaten by fish, and it does pollute our own bodies ultimately. So, it'll get wrapped around turtles, it'll kill turtles, they'll eat it, they'll choke on it. They'll get caught up in it. So it's most definitely a major global problem that we need to come up with imaginative ways of addressing. And us humans should be bright enough to be able to sort it.
Well, you've been thinking about that for quite a long time, haven't you, with your Ocean Elders groups and other campaigns you're involved in. So give us some of your suggestions on how this huge problem can be tackled.
Well, I mean, all of us are guilty, and I suddenly find myself doing an interview like this and finding I've got a plastic bottle in my hand, or it's sitting. I bet you it's right behind me as I'm talking. So we've all got to just try to avoid that. We've got to try to make sure that if we do have a plastic bottle, it's the kind of bottle that we can refill, every day of the year. And preferably every day of over the next 5 or 10 years, and so it's not throwawayable. One way of encouraging that is to do what I think your organisation is campaigning for, and that is to actually get governments to tell retailers to give money back if people bring the bottles back. And in countries like Germany, where they've done that, something like 98% of the bottles are returned.
Well, you and I remember when that applied, I guess, to glass bottles. Remember the old bottles of pop? You used to take them back and get your sixpence back.
Yeah, and it's not just the people who use the bottles that take them back. Kids all over the country, they're going to want to make a bit of money. So if somebody is foolish enough to leave a plastic bottle lying around, kids will make some extra money on the side from it. So I think it's a fantastic idea and one that should be encouraged.
We're talking about corporate responsibility and the ability of big employers to just change habits, really, I suppose. And once it becomes a habit, then it becomes more natural to use a reusable bottle. But there are big corporations, of course, that make an awful lot of money out of putting liquids into plastic bottles and selling many of them. How can you change that?
I'm afraid that that people who make a lot of money out of things that are not doing the environment any good have to change their approach. So the coal industry, I mean, it's on its knees. I mean, Trump, I'm sure, will do his best to save it, but it shouldn't be saved. It should die a graceful death, and people should move from coal to clean energies, and where you have millions and millions of bits of plastic bottles being produced and sold all over the world. If people can come up with alternatives, then the people who are making those plastic bottles are going to have to ideally come up with those alternatives themselves, and if they're going to stay in business.
Clearly, governments can have a massive influence here, and we talked about some of the initiatives in other countries. Do you think, given what President Trump has said on the campaign trail about his attitude overall towards the environment, towards climate change, that this is certainly not going to be something on his list of priorities?
I find it astonishing what he's had to say about the environment and about rolling back, I think, the positive moves that President Obama and even President Bush and other people have done before. And obviously it's extremely worrying. And therefore, I think business leaders worldwide are going to have to step in and work with the public in doing what we believe to be right. And I mean, for instance, our Ocean Elders has worked with successive prime ministers and presidents around the world to try to encourage massive marine reserves to be created in different parts of the world. and make it their legacy, their positive legacy. And David Cameron created two of the biggest marine reserves in the world before he left office. President Obama created the biggest marine reserve in the world before he left office. And these marine reserves are really important because it means that people cannot, the big fishing boats that do so much damage cannot fish in these marine reserves, and it gives a chance for fish to rejuvenate.
And with the Ocean Elders, would you hope to get some kind of time with members of the Trump administration to push this forward?
Yes, of course. I mean, we will. We've lobbied successful governments over the last. Every new government that comes into power, we sit down and we try to persuade them of the merits of our case and the scientific merits of our case. And we'll certainly be trying to do the same with the Trump administration, as we've done with, much more easily, I suppose, with other administrations where one's been knocking on an open door.
Sir Richard, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure. Thank you.